Previously on Break the Cycles. I have ridden nearly 8,000 miles in just a little over a month. My rear tire is looking pretty worn out. I continue to have no problem getting couch surfers to host me, and there is plenty of campsites in the Canadian wild. On day 35, me and Lee left Whitehorse and started our trek south. We stopped at Carcross, and then we took a detour to Beauvais Island before ending our day at the campsite in Teslin, Yukon. The following day, we rode south to Tenzia River, and this was the only day up till now that I forgot to take a camping photo. Epic fail. And then we hit the Cassiar on the following day, stopped at Jade City as our first stop, and as the name suggests, they make everything out of jade here. And then I took one of my favorite photos of the entire trip on this strip of the Cassiar Highway right by this bridge. It was so nice. It was perfect lighting, reflections off the lake. It was so good. And since I wanted to go east and Lee was heading straight to Seattle, we parted our way at Smithers. The next day, I headed towards Prince George, towards a couch surfer who also to be a forum member on the DR650 forum and happened to be a motorcycle safety instructor. And he said that he was able to help me locate a tire. On the way to the host's place, however, I got stung by a hornet. Now, this is not the first time it happened. About 3 years prior, I had one that flew up my sleeve while I was riding. And it just like flew up my sleeve, stings me while I was still going on the way. And like I had to like pull over the side of the road real quick. Now, that spot like swelled up like a baseball. And it took about a week for it to finally like kind of lose its swelling. And I thought, hey, the worst is over. Great. And then a week later, I broke out in whole body hives because apparently the venom didn't go away and then got into my bloodstream. So I ended up with steroids for like 2 weeks. Now, having known that, I have already looked at some like remedies online because I figure I'm not going to be able to have steroids on tap. So uh, people have said to use like baking soda paste and then like put it on the wound and it kind of sucks out the poison or neutralize the poison. So, but this time when I was like riding, however, like it didn't fly up my sleeve this time. It hit the back of my collar, so my collar was like kind of open because it's summer days. So like the collar, the bee hit the collar, and then sits on the back of my neck, stings the back of my neck, and then of course I felt it when I was riding, and then I hit it, and then it drops to my back, and then it stings me again. It was terrible, and so I ended up getting to the hostess house, and like I already felt like my back and the two spot the hornet stung was already swelling. But the first thing we did was that we actually found a liquidation tire for me, and it was actually a great deal. It was a really good brand, but the only catch was it was a Midas E09, which was like a big block tire. It was much more for aggressive off-roading. So this happened to be a bit of a problem later on. The following day, the host went to work. I started working on my bike and then attended to my bee sting. As you can tell in this photo, my rear tire was at the end of its life. And I also discovered the sprocket hub is kind of going bad. It wasn't like terrible, but it definitely needs to be replaced soon.
So after it baked in the sun and I cleaned it out a little bit, it's not as notchy as I thought. So it'll probably make it to Seattle fine, but I think I still need to replace it.
And as I was working on my bike, I hear these shuffling noises behind me, and then I look back, and it's just like these two random wild horses just walking into his yard, and I definitely got spooked. So like I left the where I was because I was relatively close to them, and I left and I went up on his patio and just like stared at the horses and waited till until they kind of like you know made their way out of the yard. And afterwards, I went back and I finished my bike and got it ready to go. The next day, I headed towards Icefield Parkway towards Jasper National Park. My first surprise was seeing this like bear just like strolling on the side of the road, like this really busy highway. And then the bear was just like kind of like walking by, not at all bothered by the noise or the cars, just like taking a stroll. And then I visit the Columbian Glacier, which is a pretty famous glacier in that area. And as I was there, I walked up there and I came back down. And then a storm swept by. I had to wait like 15 minutes. It was like raining pretty hard. And then finally the rain stopped, and then I was able to leave. And then afterwards, quickly, I saw a few elks on the side of the road. Again, just chilling, completely like not bothered by the traffic or people taking photos. Because now, by then, there was like a ton of people taking photos. And I definitely got too close. And in hindsight, it was probably very stupid, but I was very lucky it didn't attack me. At the end of the day, I found this secluded place behind this forested area, just east of the Saskatchewan River crossing. And then I continue on towards Banff. The roads were perfectly paved and the weather was fantastic. There is a hint of forest fire in the sky, and I mean, I was reading the news at that time, like there was tons of forest fire. There's a lot of sections of Banff that was closed, so I had to do a few detours. But you can't see it in the video, but there was definitely like this distinct smell in the air of like forest fire. And I followed along the river, headed south towards the Canadian-US border, and that was it for all the wildlife. And I finished my day at a couch surfer in Cranbrook. The couple were both in the medical field. We had a good chat, and I left the following day. The next day, I crossed the border back in the US early in the morning. The Border Patrol just chatted me up about my trip and just waved me by. It was super easy crossing. I visited some friends from the European tour a few years ago and ended up staying with two of them, of the students, in Coeur d'Alene. The next day, I took off towards Seattle. Now, my first stop was at Spokane, Washington, the memorial site of my R1100S, where the transmission blew up on my first cross country trip. And you can see the trees are literally the same after 5 years. Like it, no one didn't grow. I don't know if they're just trimming it regularly or what, but this is the exact same spot where I had to tow my R1100S back in the days back to Maryland because the transmission just, gave up its ghost. The next 100-mile stretch of road after my memorial area of my old bike, my old trip, was probably one of the sketchiest ride I've ever had. I mean, there was a very strong crosswind in the plains as I was coming across Idaho towards Washington State. It was like 40 miles per hour, like blowing on both sides. Now, it's not like the end of the world, but because I got a very off-road biased tire, like there was very little contact, like very little rubber surface contact because you got the tires that were on these blocks. And as the wind hits me, the bike will shift like a foot or two, like sideways, like this, just the whole time. And I felt like every gust of wind, I was going to go into a tank slapper. So like I was in this like constant state of panic that I would like get into a tank slapper and crash. And the only thing saving me was the steering stabilizer that I bought. And but it was very nerve wracking. I had to pull over multiple times to just calm my nerves because like every time like I would ride like 15 minutes and I was just like, oh my god, I gotta stop and then pull over on the side and like calm myself down and then like keep going. It was whack. But when I got to the Columbian River off of Route 90, the winds finally died down and I finally calmed down because I was gonna enter the mountain pass and then the mountains are blocking the winds from coming in. So I was finally able to like ride normal again, and then I saw the bridge from a very far distance from the overlook, but it still took like a good 10 minutes just like riding along the river, and then you see the bridge, and then you were finally able to cross it. After a few more hours, I made it into Seattle. I had to visit my dad's friends first in Bellevue, who took me out to lunch, and then I arrived at the intern's house in Kent, Washington. He's called the intern. He was one of the E30 guys back home, E30 car guys, and he's out here for a job that he recently got, and he's very excited that I'm visiting him. Next day, me and the intern went to Leavenworth in his E30 convertible. Leavenworth is a Bavarian town on the other side of the mountain range. I was glad to be sitting in the car, taking a break from riding, finally. And then I visited Nick and Sid the following day. We were friends from high school and we played tennis together. And he lives in Seattle now. We went to see some local car shows at Redmond, which is honestly nothing more than a flaunting of money. Afterwards, I headed north to Lee's place. He had invited me to stay at his house prior to going our separate ways in Canada. He has a whole workshop in the back of his house with motorcycle lifts, tools, everything you can imagine. So I ordered all my parts and shipped it to his house before I arrived there. There was like tons of things to replace. I mean, you look at it, it's like the rear tire. I had to get a different rear tire. It wasn't bad yet, but I had to get a different rear tire. I had to get a different front tire, do all the wheel bearings. The spark plug was also bent, probably from the crash, but I was riding it like this. And the spark plug cap also cracked, and I also had to fix that. The chain guard underneath the swing arm is also ate through. I have to get new chain guard, along with new chains, new sprockets. And after all that, I mean, the bike was in really bad need of service, and I fixed it. The following day, we decided to take a test ride in the Northern Cascades on a pretty mild gravel Forest Service road. So it was like a very easy 100-mile loop from his place. It was a northern loop, and then we looped all the way back to his house. And most of the roads are dirt and gravel road. The test was very successful. Everything was ready to go, and I was very happy. And then we got some dinner at his local favorite spot. I went back and parked and continued ready to go south. And unfortunately, I had a really slow start of the day leaving Lee's house, so I ended up staying at the intern's place for one more night. And on the way there, I stopped at Snoqualmie Falls and then finally at Kent, Washington. Next time, we explore Oregon and Northern California along the US Highway 1.